Government Gay, Alex Reynolds series, Book 1. Writer, Fred Hunter, St. Martin's Press, New York, 1997. Narrator, Eric Arst. Dedicated for Joan Edwards, who told me so. Chapter 1. I don't do bars. It was only by a fluke that I happened to be there at all. My mother had some British Film Institute thing to attend. My mother is a Brit, twice removed, once by geography and once by time. She came to America before I was born and stayed after she divorced my father because, well, the weather's better here. Anyway, she was seeing the latest in British film and Peter was working. Peter is my husband. He refers to me as his husband too. Like I said, as a rule, I don't do bars, but like everybody else, I get bored when left alone on a Friday night, and I don't mind looking at the well-groomed masses when I get a chance, which is what brought me to Charlene's. I always cringe at the decor. Black walls, which I assume make it easier to keep clean, or keep dark, which those kind of places seem to insist on, and a huge pair of pink neon lips on one wall. Why, I don't know. I was on my third bottle of Bud Light before anyone besides the bartender spoke to me for any length of time, which I suppose means I've let myself go. A voice just below my left ear actually said, "Is this your first time here?" I looked to my left and a little down and saw a brown-haired man younger than myself. Thank God I haven't let myself go as much as I thought. Who fell just short of handsome. His nose was a little long and his lips a little thin. There was one other problem that I hazard to mention. He seemed inordinately interested in my shoes, which would have made me nervous even if I'd been available. "No," I said. "I used to come here before I got married." "So it's not sanctioned by the church or by law, as my mother says. It's all the same to God." He got the point. He smiled in that way that said there was no longer any need for anxiety and we could be friends, and then went on to somebody else. I could have added that I used to come here before Charlie became Charlene, which would have opened a potentially interesting conversation, but there hardly seemed any point. Within seconds, he looked like he'd found somebody who might be able to hold his kind of conversation. Speakers were bolted up at opposing corners of the ceiling and were blasting at a level 1 decibel, short of ear-shattering, a string of hits from the 70s. There were couples of every shape and size dancing, but Charlene's is thankfully free of the ever-popular swimming lights that seem to be such a staple of this kind of bar. I was more than halfway through my current beer when the front door swung open and this big, doughy guy walked in who looked like he just witnessed a mob hit. Mob hit is the kind of thing that just springs to mind when you're from Chicago, sadly. He made his way through the dancing throng and pushed up to the empty space beside me at the bar. I had long since grown used to the endless supply of arms that jutted past me, tight fist brandishing money and barking orders at the bartender, but it was still a relief to have one opening stopped. It slowed the traffic a bit. He sat down without looking at me. I could see him reflected in the mirror behind the bar. He had dark, stringy hair and large pockets of flesh under his big, startled brown eyes, and he smelled of the type of cologne you'd expect to find at Woolworth's. When he ordered a beer above the din, I could hear a thick accent that was Polish or Russian, or German, really, or from one of those other places I'm not interested in. I was beginning to think that the startled look was because he'd come in here not realizing what kind of bar it was, and was too embarrassed to just turn around and walk out. It happens, and although, if my brothers and sisters would forgive me for saying it, he didn't look gay. He did look like he badly needed a drink. The bartender put a bottle in front of him, and he took a long pull at it, which, when he was finished, left only the sludge at the bottom. The door opened again, and 2 men walked in, stopping just inside. They looked like they were used to disappearing into the wallpaper and climbing out of it when they wanted to kill someone, like the clay people in Flash Gordon. I didn't pay them any attention, and neither did anybody else that I could see. But the guy next to me was sweaty, and I hadn't noticed that before he looked like the sweaty kind, though it wasn't attractive at all. I pulled a cigarette out of the pack in my breast pocket and almost jumped out of my skin when the doughy man struck a match and held it out to me. "Here," he said, his accent and his breath growing thicker. "Thanks." I drew in the smoke, and he tossed the glossy red matchbook in front of me. Being a gentleman, of course, I pulled the pack from my pocket and offered him one, hoping against hope that he would not take the action as a sign that I was welcoming any unwelcome advances. He took the pack, shook out a cigarette, and handed the pack back to me, and I stuck it back in my pocket. Then he lit his cigarette and tossed the matchbook back in front of me. I felt like I was in the middle of a smoker's mating ritual. The tune playing overhead, I think it was Disco Inferno, seemed to pulse for a few minutes on its own and then changed to "That's the Way I Like It." If I remembered correctly, that was playing the last time I was in a bar. Only then it was a current hit. "Is it always this noisy and crowded in here?" said the doughy man. I had that sinking feeling you get when you suddenly think that someone is going to start hitting on you and is going to be embarrassing about it. I said a simple, "Mm-hmm," and looked the other way, hoping that that would make it clear I wasn't interested. I watched the teeming masses yearning to be laid pump to the beat, then turned back to my beer. A glance at the mirror showed that the two men by the bar weren't there anymore. I couldn't see them anywhere else. I listened to the music, drank my beer, and pretty much minded my own business, which wasn't any too easy at the rate I was being jostled. I smoked the cigarette down to a stub, then pulled another one out and glanced down at the bar. The matches had vanished, and so had my sweaty neighbor. I looked at the cigarette for one of those moments of decision, and the not yet completely extinguished one in my other hand, and decided that at my age, a monkey fuck was unseemly and made you look like a die-hard chain smoker. I scanned the room. I didn't see any sign of my former neighbor. Dorothy's words to Toto came to mind. "People come and go so quickly here." I was reluctantly feeling the need to give up my own place at the bar. I had to pee. I hate public bathrooms. I just hate the idea of going into some public place and exposing my most tender asset while other people meander in and out. In order for me to work up the nerve to use a public bathroom, I have to go real bad, especially in a place like this, because, again, with apologies to my brothers and sisters, you never know what you're going to find going on in the crapper in a gay bar. Thank God there was nobody else in the bathroom, especially since it was about the size of a walk-in closet with 2 urinals in one stall. Fortunately, I was finished and all zipped up when I heard the door. I turned, and there were the 2 clay people I'd seen come in earlier. They advanced on me before. I knew what was happening and grabbed my shoulders and slammed me against the wall. I was saying something really effectual like, "What the fuck?" when the taller clay person barked at me, "Where is it?" Since I thought they were after the usual, and, well, they had to know where it was, I said, "I'm really not interested." That's when I learned that this was not your usual bathroom encounter. The shorter clay person balled up his fist and gave it to me full force in the jar. My head snapped back and slammed into the tile wall. My brain felt uncomfortably like the clapper in a bell. "What?" I sputtered. The tall one, who had used my disorientation to take a pincer hold on my throat, said, "We saw him talking to you." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. The worst part about this was I really didn't know what he was talking about. I mean, I'd talked to half a dozen guys since I came in. I could taste the blood from my split lip. The tall one took the palm of his hand and slapped it hard against the side of my face. I could feel my sinuses clearing and actually felt a moment's embarrassment that my nose was going to run and might drip down on the guy's wrist. "Really, I don't know what you're talking about," I said, and though I would like you to think I'm brave, I could actually feel panic rising in my throat. "We saw him give it to you." I thought maybe if I looked as confused as I felt, it might get through to them that I didn't know what the hell was going on. But I'll never know. Before I could say anything else, the short one pulled out a switchblade and there was a look in his eye that told me he'd been sharpening it on his grandmother's back. Now I really panicked. "Help! I don't know what you want!" I shouted while disco music pumped my words away. It was at that point that the door opened. I've never done anything like this before, but adrenaline does crazy things to you. There was just a split second when their heads turned to see who was coming in, and I used it to grab their shoulders and push them hard back out of my way like a human saloon door. And I ran, and so did the guy who was coming in to use the John. Sure, they took off after me, but they weren't as adept at plowing through a dancer floor, full of gyrating faggots as I am. I ran about 2 blocks up Well Street before I realized that I was so panicked I didn't know which way I was going, so I flagged down the first cab I could find that would stop for me, jumped in, and babbled my address. "What the hell happened?" said Peter as he pressed the washcloth that was serving as a cold compress to my lip. I like to think I have a fairly healthy self-image, but when I look at Peter Livesey, I'm humbled. He's the kindest human being I've met in my 30-odd years, and he's certainly a hell of a lot more handsome than I think I deserve. He's got a lot of dark hair, olive skin that doesn't burn. Something I envy him. Green eyes with black flecks that make them look more incisive, and a smile that could melt flesh. His teeth aren't perfect, but that's one of those things that keeps him from being something other than human. I suppose some men are nervous about bringing their boyfriends home to mother. Not only was that not necessary in our case, but my mother felt for him so badly that at one point I was afraid she'd adopt him and add incest to the rest of our social problems. He pressed the washcloth to my lip again and said, "What happened?" Apparently he didn't know how difficult it is to talk while someone's wringing out a Fieldcrest towel in your mouth. I pushed his hand away and took on the dabbing duties myself and told him the story. "Gay bashers," he said. "Gay bashers don't usually frequent gay bars," I said. "The outside of bars, yes, but inside, no. Maybe they're getting some more aggressive." That's not what this was about. I don't know what it was about, but that's not it. Christ, that hurts. Are you going to call the police? Are you kidding? I said, my eyes opening wide. Going to the police would be like getting bashed again. Come on. A gay rights ordinance does not change the way people think. We'd had this argument before, and Peter made noises about not wanting to have it again. I had to feel for him there. It was hard to argue with my face at the moment. "So you don't think it was a bashing?" "No," I said, and I could feel my cracked face, looking puzzled. I was at a loss to explain what I really did think happened. It's hard not to feel paranoid after you've been assaulted, but in a way I was reminded of Cary Grant in North by Northwest, where he was mistaken for somebody else and chased around the country while he tried to figure out who was and who and what the hell was going on. I was 7 years old when I first saw that movie, and it gave me nightmares. No, it wasn't that, they said. "Where is it?" and things like that. I thought they were really stupid rapists. I'd been lying back against the throw pillow on the couch, and at that moment a thought hit me, and I sat up. The movement made my face throb. "But you know," I said, "it felt like a drug thing." "A drug thing?" said Peter, sitting back a while. "Yeah, like they'd mistaken me for someone who was supposed to be getting drugs to them or something." I was really offended by the expression on Peter's face. He was looking at me the way I would look at someone who just said to me what I'd said to him. "I don't know a lot about drugs," he said, his voice dripping with doubt, "but I'd be willing to bet they know who their supplier was." "Yeah, but... and besides, it doesn't fit with the rest of it. Didn't they say they saw you talking to him?" If you want to be totally accurate, they said they saw him talking to me. Peter got up and went into the kitchen to re-wet the washcloth and came back saying, "Who did you talk to anyway?" "Nobody really," I said. "Just the usual. A few guys said hello to me, but other than that, nothing." "Nothing at all out of the ordinary?" he said, pressing the cloth to my lip, which was beginning to feel a little less like I'd hit it with a brick. I was probably wrong. It probably wasn't a bashing. It was probably all just some kind of weird mistake, but I wouldn't go near any more bars for a while. He said that last part like it was a suggestion, not just for my safety, but like a gentle way of letting me know that I don't belong in any gay bar without him. That's one of the things I love about Peter. He's not the kind that'd throw a fit about my going out alone like that, even if it really upset him, because, truth to tell, I'm crazy about him and he knows it. I looked at his eyes, and it was one of those moments when you realize how much a person means to you. Like you want to cry and you want to scream at the same time. Something in the middle of my stomach turned to jelly. He must have been feeling the same thing, because he smiled and started to lower his face toward mine. But I put out a hand to stop him and pointed to my split lip. He hesitated for a moment, said, "All right," and gently kissed the opposite corner of my mouth. It was at this moment that a key rattled in the front door, and the door swung open, and my mother came breezing in. My mother is the kind of woman who, in an earlier day and age, would have been described as a handsome woman. She's in her mid-50s, has shoulder-length, brownish-blackish hair, and a face that is neither too angular nor too round. With gleaming blue eyes and an aquiline nose, she's one of those women who can wear absolutely anything and get away with it. At the moment, she was wearing something that looked not unlike a sarong made out of the British flag. When I say that she came breezing in, I mean it. She seems to possess some kind of internal gust of wind on which she rides through life. She stopped when she saw the two of us and looked as if she'd just discovered the remains of Jimmy Hoffa. "Bloody hell! What have the two of you been up to?" she said. Mother has one of those lilting English accents that are completely unplacable. I smiled, and that made my lip throb. Peter told her my story, and she didn't look any too pleased to hear it. "This is absolutely disgusting," she said in that voice that always put me in mind of the angry crowd setting a torch to Newgate Prison. "That this sort of thing can go on. Did you call the police?" We explained the various reasons for not doing that, and for a while I was afraid that she might do it herself. But eventually she calmed down. She sat on the side of the couch and rested her right hand on my stomach. Her eyes were filled with the concern of a lioness who fears her cub might be just a little too thick to live. "Listen, love, are you sure you don't know what this attack was all about?" "No, I told you," I said, and even though I really didn't know, I felt compelled to try extra hard to look like I didn't know. It made her laugh. "Well, darling, I want you to promise me you'll be careful." I sighed in a mock attempt to sound like this was a hardship I couldn't bear, and said, "Mother, I promise I'll be as careful as I can be." She looked at me sideways, grabbed the tip of my nose, and gave it a little tug, and said, "Bugger," as she got up and headed for the kitchen. "It's nothing to worry about," I called to her retreating figure. Peter helped me off to the couch, and we headed for our bedroom, which is located on the second floor in the front of the house. Mother has the back bedroom, which is smaller. I originally thought she chose it because it was off the street and quieter, but in reality she likes it because it looks out over the back garden, which she spends the majority of the summer months tending. When we got to our room, Peter closed the door behind us and actually started to help me off with my clothes. I told him I didn't need help, a little petulantly, and he just shrugged. We both stripped and threw our clothes in the matching wicker hampers we keep by the closet and climbed into bed. I have to admit, the bed had never felt better to me. I sank into it like I was descending into a cloud, and would have dropped off right then were it not for Peter. He popped himself up on one elbow and looked at my face. "That boxer look is good on you," he said with a broad smile. "It gives you sort of a action-adventure aura." "Shut up," I said. He leaned over and kissed my forehead, and I was beginning to wonder whether this was going to lead. Because, after all, this is the 90s, and what can you do with a faggot with a split lip? When he rolled over on his back and sighed. "Your mother's right. You've got to be more careful," he said. "It was just some kind of stupid mistake," I replied, and closed my eyes. "That just goes to prove how wrong you can be," It was not just some sort of stupid mistake, it was a huge, incredibly bad mistake that would snowball into something we'd never forget. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.